Story 1. Not to me, but I was doing information technology work on a board member's home network. His wife was pretty insane. She told her very nice 17-year-old son, "You severely overestimate how much I care about you." The kid turned out fine after escaping his crazy mother. Story 2. It was so cruel of your mother to have you. She should have aborted you. Now you have to live a life of misery and struggle. Maybe you'll die young, though. A friend's mother drunkenly said this to me at a party. I was born without legs. It is not a huge deal. I can get around easily in and out of my chair. I have lived independently and never had problems because of having no legs. The only struggles I face are other people's hurtful opinions. Story 3. I was told I was my mother's failed attempt at a perfect-looking daughter, and that my sister was the perfect one. She tried to set my sister and me against each other throughout our childhood, but it backfired when my father divorced her and we both chose to stay with him. Story 4. I am your mother. My job is to raise you, not to love you. My mother actually said this to my face when I was 12. I was sick, and she was upset that she had to pick me up from school. She didn't remember saying it, but the sad part is that it was just a normal Thursday for her. She said things like this regularly. Story 5. I had short hair, was tomboyish, and a punk in my teens. Boys didn't like me. When I was 19, my mother got drunk at a party and asked the men there who were around my age if any of them would be kind enough to have sex with me, so I wouldn't have to die a virgin. Story 6. 3 days ago, I went to my girlfriend's house to talk because we had been having problems. I reminded her that she had come back crying on my doorstep and said we would do whatever was needed to work this out. She looked at me with the coldest stare and said she had lied. It was soul-crushing. Story 7. I love you, but I am not in love with you anymore. It is a cliché, but it still really hurts. Story 8. I dropped out of college when my girlfriend got pregnant. I had been on my way to becoming a lawyer but became a civil servant to establish a stable household. 8 months into the pregnancy, she told me she did not know whether I was the father. On the bright side, I earn more than my friends who became lawyers and work a fraction of the time. I will be able to retire at 49, which is not too far away. Story 9. I had been overweight for almost 20 years. During the pandemic, I decided to lose weight and get fit. That summer, I saved money to buy new clothes. I lost 12 kilograms by doing cardio every day. When I showed my mother what I planned to buy, she told me not to buy too many clothes because I would get fat again. I was too stunned to speak and felt really hurt. I had hoped someone else would believe in me besides myself. Even though I now go to the gym regularly and have a muscular body, I still remember those words. I thought she would be more supportive and proud. Story 10. I learned that I do not need to be with anyone good-looking. It is better to find someone stable. That is why I settled for you. Story 11. My mother told me I had no personality. I do, of course, but because I am quieter and more reserved, she equates that with having no personality. Unfortunately, it lingers in my mind when I interact with people. Parents, please be mindful of how you speak to your children. Story 12. You are just waiting for me to die so you can collect the life insurance. My wife said this near the end of her terminal fight with cancer. I do not hold any grudge about it. I know she was going through a lot and felt very insecure about dying, thinking I would be quick to move on. Losing her was still the worst day of my life, so I guess the joke is on her. Story 13. I will go first. I grew up being told that I was the least favorite child and that they actively did not like me. Story 14. Why do you think I will cry over you? I have not cried since I cried for her. My ex said this when we had been dating for 1.5 years. He was referring to his ex, whom he had dated for 2 months. Story 15. Mom said, "You know you do not have to have children when you grow up. Our family does not breed well." Story 16. I dated the love of my life for just over 2.5 years. When she broke up with me, it hurt. But it hurt even more when she sent me an invitation to her wedding the following month. I had to completely change my life to get back on an even keel. Story 17. My sister used me as an example to her kids of why they should study harder at school while we were all sitting around the table. For clarity, She said I had not studied and that they should consider how I had ended up. Up until then, I had thought that, although I was not setting the world on fire, I was doing okay and paying my bills. That certainly brought me down a peg or two. She apologized, and I told her not to worry, but she had said it. Story 18. I grew up with many toxic friendships and a few toxic relationships. The comments all blur together. Story 19. Not me, but I overheard my dad tell my mom that he would never go muff diving in her Whisker biscuits. Took me years to figure out what that meant. Story 20. I was an overweight kid who generally wore sweatpants and hoodies to hide my body as much as possible. One year I made a dress in sewing class in middle school. It was long, flowing, and not at all form-fitting. I was so proud of it that I took it home and tried it on for my mom. She looked me up and down, shrugged and said, "It's nice, but it shouldn't show all your rolls." Crushed me. I never wore it again. Story 21. You are a piece of shit who does not deserve to live. You should have been aborted. I was actively suicidal. Story 22. My youngest sister was angrily ranting at my mother about me, saying, "And that lazy bastard. It was me, about 30 years ago, who looked after my mother and my older sister when our parents separated because of family problems. In my 20s, I had to take a job I did not like so they would have a roof over their heads and food on the table." Story 23. As a teenager with severe mental health issues, one of my parents said it would be cheaper to take me out back and shoot me. Story 24. During a pregnancy scare at 18, my mom asked why I didn't have the decency to take care of it without her having to know, as she had when she was 17. In our last conversation, she told me that everything that had gone wrong in her adult life was because she had me. Story 25. I will never hit you, I swear. He decided to sexually abuse me instead. Story 26. You know nothing. My dad, after a few beers when I was 12, said this to me as I told him about recording my music. I had been recording for a few years then, and I told him enthusiastically and proudly about it. I stood up, went to my room, and cried. My mom saw this happen and yelled at my dad. Funny enough, I record music for a living now. So fuck you, Dad. Story 27. I was told to kill myself several times, but the worst was a man I thought loved me. He sat me down seriously and explained why I should kill myself, listing exactly how everyone in my life would either benefit or not even notice. He almost convinced me. Story 28. Shut up. That's why your girlfriend killed herself while playing against a classmate in a video game 6 years ago. Fuck you, I'm Ryan Moore. Story 29. A few highlights from my mother. No one will ever love you. You will be nothing in life. I hope you and your brother die. May God give you what you deserve. I curse you. Story 30. I was told I looked ugly when I slept when I was 12. I am now 21 and still have trouble closing my eyes, even with my girlfriend of 5 years next to me. Story 31. I was a dork in middle school, bullied and ostracized. I remember trying to overcompensate on the school bus by being loud and attempting to be funny. One kid, who had been silent until then, finally blurted out that I was not funny or cool and told me to stop trying. Comments like that have stuck with me more than I would care to admit. Story 32. I hope you die of cancer, just like your dad. 8 months after my dad died of cancer, my belongings were left on the lawn. It was said to me by my ex-fiance's best friend after I called off the engagement because of my ex's crippling gambling addiction. Jennifer, I hope you've had a fucking miserable life in Crossfield, Alberta. You horrific, sour, evil, pus-filled bag of hatred. I hope Danny left you on the side of a highway and you've been searching for your soul ever since. Fuck you. Story 33. My mother said the only reason I had returned to care for her during her cancer was that I had failed at everything else in life and wanted to pretend I was a good person. She committed suicide 2 months later. Story 34. Decades ago, a coworker was asked to interview a job candidate but, for some reason, could not, so he asked me to do it instead. I later learned that our boss scolded him because he believed the candidate would lose interest in the job after meeting me and would not want me as a coworker. In recent years, many bosses have asked me to conduct interviews. Story 35. Every time I ate, put food on my plate, or got a snack, my dad would make the most horrendous pig squeal that still haunts me. This started in my preteen years and ended when I cut him out of my life in my 30s. He especially loved doing this at parties and restaurants. I worked on it in therapy for years, but I still struggle to eat in front of people sometimes. Once I was so triggered by a pig toy someone gave my child that I got rid of it and had a meltdown. I still feel guilty about the toy, but my dad does not feel guilty for the public humiliation or for causing my disordered eating. He would say he could not take a joke and laugh out loud. Story 36. Being called an ungrateful bitch by my mother when I was in my teens was pretty fucking hurtful. I was a really good kid and an excellent student, so it made very little sense at the time. Story 37. I've struggled with weight and self-esteem my entire life. About 10 years ago, I reached my goal weight and was in the best shape of my life. My fiancé told me I was unattractive because he could see my spine. That statement stuck with me. Story 38. I'm glad your dad is dead. To be fair, I asked, what's the most outrageous thing you could say right now? So I was asking for it. Story 39. This is a bit of a long read. Skip it if you want. In my 5th year of college, in 2016, my student advisor yelled at me and said I was a terrible student who would not amount to anything. My parents said similar things on 2 occasions. Once right after I graduated high school in 2011 and once after I failed a semester in my 3rd year. They warned that if I took a break to figure out what I wanted to do, I would end up in an unsatisfying job with a lower quality of life. Some background. Throughout middle school and high school, I thought I wanted to be a civil engineer, but after graduation, I began to doubt that. I struggled with confidence, so I followed my parents' advice. After the 3rd year, I switched to a mathematics emphasis because I liked math, but I continued to struggle. After my advisor criticized me for failing again in my 5th year, I quit. There was no sense in spending more money when it was not working out, and I should have been more assertive and stopped sooner. Now I have a job at a rapidly growing company that I love, with good benefits and income. I have been working to better myself since that time, and I am significantly happier than I was in college. My parents and family are also happy to see my progress, which feels good. Story 40. You will probably be abusive if you ever get a partner. A friend also told me, while drunk, that a girl had once been interested in me, but he persuaded her to be with him. Story 41. When I was 15, my mother told me I was emotionally torturing her because I asked her to turn the music up in the car. She broke into a fit of rage, and I realized how much she hated me. Story 42. My mom whipped me about 20 times with a wooden spoon and growled that it felt good. I was 10 and had accidentally turned on the washing machine when I climbed on it to look out the window and wave at my dad, who was outside doing yard work. Story 43. I came out to my dad, and he never spoke another word to me or to my twin, who took my side. Now we do not have a dad. He threw away 18 years as if they meant nothing. Story 44. A Sunday school teacher who was a family friend told my younger sister and me that, even though my mother's death had been ruled an accidental suicide, she was still going to hell. My dad pulled us out of there after he thoroughly confronted her and the pastor. Story 45. Where would you even go if you left? Your family rightfully hates you. No one could love you. You couldn't even get suicide right. I was in the hospital recovering and told him I wanted a divorce. Story 46. That mushroom is the size of your small penis, so it suits you. For context, she was talking about a Goomba from Mario. Story 47. I should have whipped it out and splurged on your mum's arse. Story 48. My mom said never to have children. They will ruin your life. I am an only child. Story 49. You might not be my son. I was 16 then. Now I am 54, and I wish to God I were not related to him. Story 50. I want to be with someone like you, just not you. That instantly shut off any feelings I had for her. Story 51. My brother, who was in middle school at the time, told me I was too ugly to lose my virginity. I believe I was a senior in high school, and he said it in front of the whole family at Christmas. Story 52. It would be like picking a ball from a gigantic, fully stocked bingo wheel. One of the first things that comes to mind is my mother not taking me seriously when I told her my boyfriend was sexually assaulting me. She told me to stop exaggerating, suck it up, and be grateful I had a boyfriend. Thanks, Mother. Story 53. He would never do that to a girl. I do not believe you, laughed my best friend of more than 10 years, who is my brother's boyfriend. He did, in fact, do it to me and to his ex. Story 54. Long hair is for girls. If I let you grow your hair, everyone will think you are the F word, and I do not want that. My mum said this when I was around 5. Story 55. Why should I care about someone who gets mad at me every 3 weeks? When asked why he gave me a second chance, he said I was just desperate. I was made to feel guilty because I stood up for myself, and it did not help that he held it over my head. I was not angry. I wanted to communicate the problem he had caused so we would not have a rift between us. The rift grew until I cut him off, and I have not turned back. Story 56. I was raving to my mom about how wonderful the new guy I was seeing. When I paused, her first question was, "If he's so great, what does he see in you?" Story 57. I am self-conscious about my looks. As a teenager, I laughed and smiled awkwardly. My sister said, "You finally look cute." After that, I stopped trying to smile for a long time. Story 58. You are a fucking piece of shit. You will never be my son. Story 59. My sister once said while drunk, "You are an embarrassment to be related to." She has said many other terrible things while under the influence of alcohol, but that remark was especially hard to hear when I was a 20-year-old still figuring out life. Story 60. When asked what she originally liked about me, my ex-wife, after 14 years together and 2 years of marriage, said, "Nothing really. I guess I just wanted a boyfriend." Story 61. Last time this question was posted I answered, and Reddit users used my response to taunt me. So yeah. Story 62. I feel like you're a waste of my time. This came from my best friend from my junior year of high school. I had known her for 8 years. The whole thing started because she said she had feelings for me and I said I did not. Story 63. There's something missing in you. That's why I wouldn't have a relationship with you. I was deeply depressed, alone in a new country, and obsessively trying to find out what the missing thing was. Story 64. When I was 7 months pregnant with my twins, I had a friend over while my fiancé had 2 friends of his over as well. He and I argued because he and his friends were treating me like trash. His friends joined in and I ended up crying in my bedroom. My friend went out to confront all 3 of them. As they argued, I walked out and heard my fiancé list every single thing he hated about me. Still stays in my head. That was just the beginning of the hellstorm I endured. It was so harmful I almost went into labor early, and I still hate myself to this day. Story 65. A 12-year-old classmate told me that I was ugly. The school photographed students for the annual yearbook and offered copies. I bought mine, which arrived in a window envelope with the photo visible. The teacher held up the envelope for the class to see. A classmate shouted, "He is ugly," and the others laughed. Story 66. Mom said, "After you told me you were gay, I want to commit suicide." Story 67. Fuck you for being my hiding place when I had nowhere else to go. Story 68. Silence is the worst thing that can ever happen. Nothing comes close. Story 69. I showed up on the first day of school after summer break wearing a Journey Escape Tour shirt. One of my friends said, "Journey? They play pussy music." I wish I could say it did not hurt at the time, but I am still thinking about it years later. Now I listen to Journey all the time with no shame. Story 70. Too bad you didn't die when I had you. I was delivered by emergency cesarean section. An ex who knew I had a difficult relationship with my mother said, "I am just like my mother." The same person also said, "I am so damaged that no one will ever love me and I am not even attractive anymore. Who would want me?" Story 71. My mom said to me, "The reason you do not get attention is because they need it more," referring to my older siblings. Story 72. Probably when my friend told me they did not like my favorite movie. Second place is when my dad said he never wanted children and never wanted me. Story 73. How do your parents feel going through the pain of having sex with each other, only to have you turn out to be a massive disappointment as a son? Story 74. You were born and raised in poverty. You will always be poor. I cannot be with you when you are just another statistic. I will forever feel inadequate in any relationship, especially when it comes to finances. Story 75. My father-in-law told my husband, me, and our 3 daughters that he no longer wanted to see us ever again, even on his deathbed. This happened after an argument on my mother-in-law's 60th birthday between my husband and his younger sibling. It was something very small that blew up because people took sides and got involved. This was 4 years ago and we have not returned, but I have been talking to my husband about going back to see them, especially his parents who are getting older. Story 76. Mom said this family would have been much better off without you. I wish you had never come back. None of us want you here. Story 77. I heard that your mom has cancer and there's no hope. Is that true? Jesus. As an 18-year-old in denial, that hit me hard. Story 78. It does not hurt me, fuck her, but she wanted it to hurt. I have a chronic pain disorder that none of my 22 cousins has, but my sister and I do. My bitch aunt told my mom that I will forever be afflicted and never live a full life or have kids. I am doing great. I am engaged and thinking about starting a family, while she is dead inside, hates everything, believes the world is out to get her, is jealous of my mother's and other family members' successes, and has had zero contact with any of us since my grandmother died. Hateful people rarely live happy lives, so I can deal with being in the hospital every once in a while. I am nice, so people bother to visit. Story 79. My long-term friend hit me in the face with a can of beer, so I ended up choke slamming him like a World Wrestling Entertainment move. I realized immediately what I had done, slapped him awake, and he proceeded to tell me that my best friend hated me, that I was a loser, and that no one liked me, etc. To this day, he says he does not remember anything from that night. A year later, my best friend committed suicide. We're on good terms now, but that will always be in the back of my mind when I'm around him. Story 80. My father said it to my husband about me and in front of me. We were on vacation visiting my family. My father, my grandmother, and my aunts. Everyone was talking, laughing, and telling stories around the table. I told a funny story about my daughter and everyone laughed. Then my father suddenly turned to my husband and said, "How do you even still love her? Don't you ever wonder where the quiet, shy young woman you married went? Now she's getting old, is loud, and laughs too much." Everyone fell silent and the atmosphere became awkward. My aunt and grandmother scolded him, and he said, "What? I'm just kidding." My husband tried to catch my eye to see what I wanted him to do, but I was mortified. I went quiet and felt unable to speak for the rest of the visit, which was cut short because I wanted to leave. It hit all my insecurities, and I don't think I'll ever get over it. Sometimes, when I'm having a good time and laughing, I think about it and immediately sober up. Story 81. No one will want you because you are bipolar, a relative said to me when I broke up with an ex-boyfriend. I am happily married now, but it still stings. Story 82. I'm glad your mom isn't alive to see you now, Dad said. I was in high school. I didn't do drugs or alcohol, and there was no degenerate behavior on my part. We were just having an argument and he always tried to cut to the bone. It wasn't particularly hurtful. By this point in my life, I was effectively immune to everything that came out of his mouth. If a drunk says over the top, gross things to you constantly, you just stop caring about anything they say. Story 83. My ex-boyfriend broke up with me right before my trip to see him. He said, "I want to break up and I don't love you." Another time, I was being ghosted by a girl I was seeing. Sometimes silence hurts the most. Story 84. I cannot keep lying to you or myself. I still love you, and you have been nothing but loving and supportive. I feel I need to explore the other side of my sexuality. She had bisexual urges throughout our relationship, and I had my suspicions. It was hard to deal with, but she was open and honest with me and with herself, which took some of the sting out of hearing it. Story 85. There were very detailed instructions to cut my throat. I was just trying to find my way out of the building. I get that I'm ugly, sure, but that's no reason to be that rude to me. Story 86. One of my best girlfriends told me that she could not believe the girls who dated me and that she did not find me attractive at all. Story 87. It was the repeated mantra that no one liked me, not even my family. Everyone was just tolerating me, and I would never have friends or a boyfriend. My father strongly projected that belief. Story 88. Your miscarriage is for the best. You're a pussy and would die during childbirth. Story 89. Maybe someday, but not right now. It was the last time we spoke in person. It breaks my heart that I have not heard his voice since, and that someday never came. That is life, I suppose. Story 90. A really good friend who is going through rough times told me it is not you, it is me. I met her through her ex. I understand why she needs some distance right now, but damn does it hurt. Story 91. We were dating for only about 4 months, but I was starting to get really smitten with her. At the end of the relationship, she asked me about my parents and home life. She, unlike me, had essentially zero conflict in her household. She said she did not even know where her parents went when they had an argument because she had never seen them fight. I, on the other hand, had a pretty turbulent and abusive childhood. I did my best to answer her questions without trauma dumping. After my explanation, she immediately shut down and became cold and distant. I thought she might be worried that I would be just like my parents, but I tried to assure her that I am not like them. She said, "No, I know you're not like them. It's just that now I understand why you like me so much." As if to say that because her home life was perfect, I would cling to any semblance of peace. She broke up with me the next day. Story 92. My mom said, "Don't be dramatic," and chuckled after I tried to open up about my depression and mental health. For context, it took all I had to tell her, and I had serious thoughts of ending my life several times by that point. I didn't, but it soured my relationship with her. I think she thought she was being helpful, as if I could just snap out of it. How I wish that had been true. I was already frustrated and angry with myself for not being able to pull myself out. It took several years to crawl out of that pit, and many times I still feel like I'm constantly looking over my shoulder, afraid I'll slip back in. Story 93. When my dad found out I was hoarding food in my bedroom because I was suffering from anorexia, he pinned me in the corner of my room and yelled at me for making him so angry that a tumor grew in his liver, which became stage 4 liver cancer. He died a year later, exactly 8 days after my 15th birthday. Story 94. My father told me I was starting to look fat in my belly and sides when I was in 6th grade. It absolutely shattered my self-image and taught me that people notice and care about that sort of thing. I have not been 100% confident in my skin since. Story 95. I didn't mean for you to wake up. I am sure you all can fill in the blanks as to what was happening. It was definitely terrible, and I am glad not to be with that guy anymore. Big red flags. Story 96. My ex-partner and I were expecting our first child. I started having contractions. The baby was positioned oddly, so the contractions were focused in my lower back. It was very painful. I had been awake all night trying to get relief and had taken many hot showers. I tried to wake my partner, but he kept falling back to sleep almost immediately. Around 6 in the morning, I woke him again and asked if he could rub my lower back because it hurt so much. Once again, he made no effort to move or show any concern. So I became snappy and explained that the baby was coming and that I had been awake all night, and it would be really helpful if he could help me. He replied, "Go away, woman. I'm trying to sleep." Story 97. My older brother, who was a heroin addict, was taking advantage of our elderly and disabled mother. He lied, stole, and risked the roof over her head, among other things. I texted him and told him to grow up and treat our mother better. His response was "Fuck off and leave me alone, you nosy fucking bitch." Those were the last words he ever said to me. He blocked me, and we did not get a chance to talk before he overdosed and we had to remove him from life support. For most of my life, he was my role model, protector, friend, and the best brother a girl could ask for. I miss him so much, and it tears my heart to shreds that he had never spoken to me that way, but that was our last exchange. Story 98. My skin is slightly darker than my cousin's, so I'm somehow less valuable. Story 99. When I came out as trans to my parents at 13, my father called me an abomination before God. Story 100. You can stop lying to me. I've seen hundreds of lazy students like you before, and you all give away the same tells. You really think I'm gullible, don't you? Said by a college professor who did not believe me when I came back to school after taking 2 weeks off when my mother died of cancer. The university had sent emails to all my professors informing them that I would be gone for some time due to her death. They were all kind, except this one professor who hated men with a severe passion. Her chemistry lab had 27 women and 3 men. We were all put into groups, and our lab work was constantly graded unfairly. If we wrote a significant figure incorrectly on one of the 5 or 6 pages of the lab report, we lost 2 points, whereas the female groups lost half a point. She continued to act abusively and even told me to find a new professor who believed my lies. She was fired the following week. It turned out she had been engaged twice and both relationships ended, and she had developed an unhealthy hatred toward men. I wish I had known that before signing up for her lab. The reason this stung the most was how it destroyed my love and passion for science. I was a freshman, my mother had just died, and this professor was so hateful toward me that she laughed in my face and accused me of lying. I know I associated that frustration and anger with the entire department, but I had always looked up to my mother, who was a medical professional. I could not focus on my work, and even when I could, my desire was scarred by that professor. What I had dreamed of my whole life suddenly felt wrong. That professor was the catalyst. Science itself did not harm me, but being there felt wrong, and it completely changed how I expected my college and career path to go. I still feel that if this person had been kind and rational, I would have continued on the paramedical path. My mother's death was brutal, but the anger and frustration with this professor derailed me more than anything. Story 101. I really think you are right. You should have killed yourself. A year ago I would have cried, but I do not feel that way now. It would be for the best. It would make you happy. These were the words of my so-called best friend, who was 32 years old at the time, after forcing me to talk to him during my first proper panic attack. I had been suffering from depression for roughly 2 decades before that. If it had not been for my fiancée, I probably would have taken his advice, because this conversation broke me in ways I am not sure I will ever recover from. Story 102. When I came out as transgender, my brother told me never to speak to his children, my niece and nephew, or he would kill me. He told them I was dead to the family and that I had passed away. He is in the military, and I believe he would harm me. I have not spoken to my niece, nephew, or brother in over 10 years. Story 103. I tried to abort you 3 times. Too bad I didn't go back a 4th. Story 104. My mother told me throughout elementary and middle school that there was something wrong with me and that I had no friends. We lived in the middle of nowhere with no neighbors. My parents rarely, if ever, let anyone come over or let me go to friends' houses. I could not use the phone. A tight leash does not begin to describe the control and alienation they inflicted. My father said that women will never do anything as well as a man. My brother asked what college I was going to and said he hoped it was the one with the serial killer, referring to Ted Bundy. Lovely family. Story 105. I like your nude photos, but I can't masturbate to your pictures. It's weird. I need to see pictures of other women because it's something different, and I've seen you naked. I've seen every angle of you. There are no surprises. My husband. Story 106. My ex-wife said she felt I had sold her a bill of goods. That ended my love for her right there. We stayed together for 20 more years because I did not have the courage to leave. Story 107. My former best friend told me to get the fuck out of his house and said he never wanted to see me again over nothing. Story 108. My father-in-law told all his friends that when he met me he did not like me. He thought I was fat and that I did not have a good enough job to date his daughter. Story 109. You're poor and fat because you spend too much on restaurants and fast food. Story 110. The doctor told your mother she should have had an abortion. Story 111. When I finally told someone about my past and my groomer, they said they would have done the same to me as he did. Story 112. I love you, but I just do not like who you are anymore. I was finally feeling happy in life. Story 113. Same person. Could be worse. He's a nice guy. A week after I uncovered my now ex-wife's affair with a colleague. We all worked together. Someone said I looked like a skeleton with skin stretched over me. Months later, I was still struggling with life. Story 114. She said, "Don't try coming back." She pushed me out the back door, slid the door shut, locked it, and looked at me with a smug expression. I was 13 and had forgotten my backpack at school. That was the first time I became homeless. Story 115. I was in a waiting room when a Spanish couple said in Spanish that I was really ugly. They did not know I understood them. Story 116. Every time someone thinks I am a boy, it affects me. I am a cisgender girl, and the comments, whether accidental or not, still hurt. I often feel like a child wearing her mother's makeup or that my body resembles that of a prepubescent boy. I am 19 and I have some curves despite being thin, but I am still learning to see my body for what it is, not the extremely warped version I imagine. Body dysmorphia affects me constantly. Story 117. You killed your best friend. My best friend was murdered, and my ex would try to hit below the belt whenever we argued. I will never forget those words. Story 118. I enjoy pissing you off. My mindset completely changed. Someone I once thought was a friend turned out to be an ass. Story 119. I know you no longer love me, and you have a stepdad who's better than me, so I'm going to jump in front of a car. Actual quote from my dad before I cut off contact at the end of 2023. Story 120. My mother told me she would always compare me when I was 10. Stuck with me for years. Story 121. If you want to kill yourself, I will give you the bullet to do so. This came from one of the two people who had been raising me for the first 12 years of my life. It is hard to forget the feeling of utter betrayal. Story 122. My mother screamed that I was nasty and evil, with a look of pure disgust on her face. She kicked me out of the house, and I ran to the nearest playground and bawled my eyes out. I was 6. Story 123. Not only do you eat like a pig, but you are starting to look like one too. I was 8 and had chocolate ice cream around my lips. My father, you make me want to kill myself. I fucking hate you, because you will not leave. My husband. Story 124. EW said the girl I liked the second she saw me walk out of a room. Felt like a liver shot. Story 125. My mother told me when I was 14 that my father would have been ashamed of me. My father died when I was 5. Story 126. I don't care what the fuck happens to you in the future. You might also disappear. A certain person I once trusted. Story 127. My girlfriend said she did not want to need me. It devastated me. Story 128. My mom said during a particularly rebellious period of my teens, "We wanted a daughter, but you were born. Don't misunderstand." My parents loved me unconditionally, never let me down, and gave me everything I needed to succeed and enough love and support to last a lifetime. But that line still hurt, and it still does. Story 129. You know you don't look good, right? You're grotesque. I thought I looked good. Story 130. My ex-wife said I was never her first choice. She said she married me because I had a promotion coming before the man she was still talking to. This was about a year and a half into a 3-year marriage and a couple of months before I deployed in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom. Story 131. I was only your friend out of pity. You were my best friend for 6 years and the godmother of my first child. Story 132. In high school, a girl from an all-girls school invited me to her homecoming. We had fun and I was very into her. We hung out again and made out while watching a movie. I was excited to see her again, but she only gave me the time of day because her friends dared her to see if she could make out with me. She stopped talking to me immediately after. It still stings more than 10 years later. Story 133. A patient I was helping at work said, "You are so sweet. You will never make it here." I have always been complimented for my kindness, and that was the first time someone said it would be the reason I would not have a job there. For context, I am a laboratory assistant and phlebotomist. Story 134. I never really loved you. I just stayed because I felt sorry for you. My ex was extremely abusive. Story 135. A family member I loved said, "You talk too much. Do you ever just shut up?" I was in the middle of excitedly telling them something as a little kid. It hurt like hell at the time and has stuck with me ever since. Story 136. Probably my mom when she told us she was saving my baby blanket for our firstborn. Our firstborn was stillborn, and my mom refused to acknowledge their existence. I don't know if it was intentional, but it still hurts to this day. Story 137. I love you. You're great, but you're better off finding someone else. I don't love you the way you think. I'm just a friend. This was about 10 years ago. It still hurts to remember it. Story 138. My ex-girlfriend said, "You're a fucking pedophile." When I, at 21, spoke to my 19-year-old friend, whom I had known for 7 years. This was while she routinely spoke to friends 8 years older than her. Story 139. My dad asked me how I have friends if I do not talk during family dinners. Later, I was diagnosed with generalized anxiety. Story 140. Someone who did not know me and had never met me claimed I did not care about my children. They said I adopted them for political clout, laughing out loud. Of course, that person does not have children of their own. Story 141. I could write a book about the things my parents said to me. Both parents believed I would become a criminal, a burnout, or an addict, and they ignored signs that I would not. You know there's nothing wrong with getting a general educational development credential, right? My father said while I was on the honor roll. Wow, I never thought this day would come. My father said at both my high school and college graduations. Story 142. My sixth sense was telling me that you were never going to succeed in maintaining your excellent scholarship. You should drop out of that prestigious, expensive university and go to a cheap public one. You will be like those who bet their house on blackjack and lose everything. For years later, I made it. Story 143. My first wife always said she wanted children. Even when we dated for 3 years through a year-long engagement, and during 7 years of marriage, she said the same. I always wanted to be a dad, and her claims about wanting children were a major reason I married her. She kept putting it off whenever I asked, but she continued to say she wanted children. Near the end of those 11 years, I asked again and she said, "Yeah, I want to have children, just not with you." Things were already headed toward divorce, but her words gave me the courage to file for divorce a few days later with hardly any regrets. Story 144. My dad told me it was my fault that he had lost the favorite job he ever had. The company was facing layoffs, and because he was going through personal problems and was potentially getting divorced, they chose to let him go. Why would this be my fault? The personal problem was his arrest for domestic violence after he punched me in the back and fractured one of my ribs. He did not end up getting divorced. Later, during one of their regular screaming matches, he accused my mother of having an affair and claimed I was not his son. Those were difficult times. Story 145. I'm really sorry you're feeling this way. Are you safe right now? If you are in immediate danger, call your local emergency number, for example, 911 in the US, right now. If you are in the US, you can also call or text 988 to reach the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. If you are elsewhere, I can help find local crisis numbers. Please consider contacting someone you trust and telling them how you feel. Do you have a plan or the means to hurt yourself? I can stay with you and help find support. What would help most right now? Story 146. My grandma said this to me when I was 14 after seeing a picture my mom took of me in the pool with my shirt off. She told me I needed to wear a bra. I'm a guy. It made me cry in front of my family. I begged my mom to shred the picture, but she thought it was fine. Still haunts me. Story 147. Your damaged goods. I thought I could fix you, but I can't. Story 148. My mom asked about you today. She wanted to know why you have a boyfriend and I do not. But I told her I am not like you and I do not go for any guy who shows interest in me. Story 149. I should have drowned you the day you were born. My mother. Story 150. Yeah, I swiped right first, but I do not want to risk being accused of being a pedophile. Oh, the joys of being 24 but genuinely looking like a prepubescent teen. Story 151. You weren't a rebound. I didn't think I had been until that lodged in my brain for the rest of my life. Laughing out loud. Story 152. It was kind of strange. My best friend's dog died, and he had gotten pretty drunk, so I bought McDonald's for him and his family because I figured they were in no state to cook. My ex-girlfriend said, and I quote, "You're fucking pathetic and such a doormat for doing that." That really hurt because he was my best friend, someone I'd known since I was 14, and his whole family was very grateful. I broke up with her that night. First, because he was my best friend and her comment angered me. Second, because that is the sort of thing I would naturally do for someone I care about. I resented her for a while because she made me worry that my actions were being mischaracterized. In the end, I'm glad it happened. I'm with my current girlfriend and have never been happier. She said it was precisely those little things I do that made her love me. Story 153. My dad said that if something bad happens to him, that is life, after he slept with my son against my wishes. At the time, I was experiencing postpartum anxiety and postpartum depression and had frequent panic attacks because I feared my son would die. Story 154. Everyone knows you are pretending to be gay to get close to girls. Like, damn, do you think I would endure being bullied every day just for that? Story 155. My dad told me I was too thick to go to university and that it would be a waste of time. I invited him to my graduation just so I could rub it in his face. On Friday, my wife told me that I weigh the same as her and our 4-year-old daughter combined. That one stung. Story 156. He was not sure he wanted to have children with me. Spoiler, we already have children. Story 157. My mom said, "You know what? Your bullies are right. You are fat." Story 158. You're a fuck up just like your brother and sister. I was incredibly depressed as a child, and instead of asking me what was wrong or why I did not want to go to school, I got that. It is etched into my shoulder. This happened in 2009. It was from my stepfather. I later found out that none of my parents wanted me. I uprooted my small family to Oklahoma, only to learn that my biological father never wanted anything to do with me, after already learning my mother and the rest of my family felt the same. I'm the youngest. Story 159. My mother said I could have hung myself instead. It would have made less of a mess. This was after an attempt when I was 16. Story 160. After I told my narcissistic mother that I was suicidal, she said, "Well, if that's your destiny." Story 161. You weren't a good boyfriend. I'm a great boyfriend, just not to you. Story 162. Something that still traumatizes me is that when I was a toddler, I broke a plate and was terrified when my mother found out. I am not sure if I was crying, but I probably was. I said sorry for the first time, and she replied that it was already done. I cannot remember exactly what she did afterward, but I remember the way she said it. It felt dismissive. Ever since then, I have had a hard time saying sorry. As I grew older, into high school, I realized that no one in my family owns up to anything or apologizes when they are wrong. It was always dismissed. There was no accountability. For context, we are an Asian family, and confrontations are typically harder to deal with. I am 24 now, and there is a bit more maturity in my family, but there are still times when everyone is avoidant during conflicts. No one really hears each other out, we just brush things off and pretend to move on. But we do not. This was probably the start of my sensitivity to the tone and volume of people's voices. I was a very sensitive child and remain so in some ways. Story 163. I had been married to my wife for 14 years. One night we went out to dinner with friends, and she was acting a little off. When we got home, I talked to her about it, and she said, "I don't feel like being married anymore." I was devastated. 2 weeks later, she had an apartment lined up, and 2 weeks after that, she moved out. Her stuff was packed. As she took the last box out the door, she looked at me and said, "I don't think I was ever in love with you," and walked away. That phrase was the most hurtful thing anyone has ever said to me. Story 164. Men won't find you attractive if you're fat, said my mom when I was 16, shortly after I got a boyfriend. Story 165. I know exactly which buttons to push to shut you down, Mom said. I was dealing with confidence issues and depression at the time. Story 166. My mom broke my heart twice. After my stepdad started a fight with me, beat me, and pushed me down a flight of stairs when I was 16. She said, "You're ruining my marriage and I can't choose you over him." When I was 19 and my girlfriend at the time became pregnant, she told me, "You're going to be a deadbeat dad just like David. David is my sperm donor." Story 167. You're an awful person because you come from an awful family. It was from my ex's mom, who said that after I asked my ex to drive me to a test because I did not have a car. It was a long story, but she was basically angry because my family was too poor to buy me a car. I lived with my grandparents. My parents were on drugs and I never saw them. It hurt because I was a senior in high school, working hard to be a better person than my family and saving for my own car while attending school. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.